There's been a bit of buzz about a new Nightmare on Elm Street film in the works, and while it's doubtful any of those behind the film will be listening, I figured I'd put some things I'd like to see in a new Nightmare on Elm Street out there into the ether. Last week's review of the Elm Street fan film, Dylan's New Nightmare, got me in the mood to talk about the franchise and its potential future. So come with me to a town called Springwood, down a street called Elm Street, and let's talk about a sicko serial killer named Freddy Krueger. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Of all the slashers of the 80s, Freddy was not my favorite, but that doesn't mean I didn't see all of the movies as soon as they were released. One of my fondest horror memories was a night where my mom was having some kind of class reunion meeting with a bunch of her friends at our house, and the other room was filled with old ladies cackling at their own jokes. My brother and I convinced my mom to let us rent A Nightmare on Elm Street on video to keep us occupied. Having already been a horror kid reading every issue of Fango from cover to cover, I already knew about the movie, but our small town in Ohio wasn't big enough to have it come to our theaters. So this was the first chance we had to see the new sensation everyone in Fango was raving about. We turned down the lights and started the movie, and as the film went on, my brother and I began holding a pillow to our chins, just in case we needed to hide our eyes, something we only did for only the scariest of horror movies. By the time Nancy drags Freddy into the real world, my brother and I were leaping up and down on the sofa with unbridled excitement. Not many movies did that to us as kids, but A Nightmare on Elm Street sure did the trick. I was a fan of the series ever since. While each of the Elm Streets had their moments, the first film was pretty much the best you're going to get in the franchise. Sure, I loved Dream Warriors as much as the next guy, but it just never captured that level of nightmarish horror of the original. Many have heard about Wes Craven's inspiration for Freddy Krueger, about a kid from Cambodia who escaped to the U.S., but was afraid to fall asleep in fear that he would be killed in his dreams. From that story sprang A Nightmare on Elm Street, and while that little nugget is an interesting one, I feel modern audiences would be able to handle something a little deeper. Out of all the slashers, Freddy was the most intellectual. Sure, the later films were dumbed down with quips and fads, but Craven's investigations into nightmares really made the first film and a bit of New Nightmare potent in terms of what scares us when we fall asleep. There have been a handful of films that have dealt with the horrors of dreams and nightmares in a serious and, most importantly, scary manner. I'd implore those behind this film to pay attention to these films, as they delved into themes that came up in the A Nightmare on Elm Street series in creative and terrifying ways. One of them is The Nightmare, directed by Rodney Asher. It's a 2015 documentary examining sleep paralysis. This film is a thorough examination of what we understand about nightmares as well as what we still don't. It gives first-hand experientials recounting moments when people are conscious in their dreams, feeling some kind of evil presence, yet unable to move in their beds. These narrated scenes are absolutely terrifying and would make for fantastically intimate scenes of pure horror if done right in an Elm Street movie. The documentary also reveals that oftentimes creatures referred to as shadow people have been seen in the corners of rooms of those experiencing sleep paralysis. These beings, often wearing what looks to be some kind of fedora or top hat, fill the dreamer with an ultimate sense of dread. Others recount demons appearing in the space between sleep and consciousness that weigh on their chests and suffocate them as they are paralyzed, as depicted in the famous painting by Henry Fuseli. Sure, it's great seeing Freddy laughing and taunting his victims, but utilizing the elements of sleep paralysis and all of the phenomena that goes with it would offer up something much meatier for a series to delve into. Another film that may not be the best, but I liked quite a bit, was called Shadow People from 2013 by director Matthew Arnold and starring The Walking Dead's Dallas Roberts. Shadow People deals again with sleep paralysis and, of course, shadow people, but more interestingly, It delves into the way sleep paralysis seems to spread like a contagion, as if the mere mention of suffering from the phenomenon can cause others to experience the same horrors. This film isn't the best, but it does explore the avenue of nightmares as a contagious disease decently, and like that contagion, Freddy is often spread to a group of friends in many of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Another pair of lower budgeters that explore some fantastic dream imagery are 2014's Horsehead and 1988's Paper House. Director Romaine Bassett's Horsehead brings to life an actual nightmare as a being with a horse head haunts a young girl's dreams and has a key to a traumatic past. While in Paper House, filmmaker Bernard Rose, who went on to make Candyman, delivered another look at a troubled child who retreats into a dream world and encounters another child who suffers from abuse. Of course, it would be amazing for an Elm Street film to evoke some of the surreal majesty achieved in The Cell by Tarsem. That film was able to breathe life into some of the most horrifying yet beautiful imagery put on screen. The Cell is able to take a glimpse into a truly sick mind as Jennifer Lopez and Vince Vaughn enter the mind of a serial killer played by Vincent D'Onofrio to find his latest victim and see what haunts this monster's dreams. Finally, there's a more recent and underrated gem called Come True from 2020 that would serve as a great inspiration for a new Elm Street film. This one is from visionary filmmaker Anthony Scott Burns, who did Our House and the Father's Day segment in Holidays. And it's about a young runaway who experiences nightmares and volunteers for a sleep study and unlocks a monster within her dreams. Come True feels like a Nightmare on Elm Street reboot without the Elm Street name, as a monstrous dream demon haunts the runaway's dreams and the barriers between dreams and reality begin to break down. One could only hope whomever takes the responsibilities of helming a new Elm Street would do a little research and maybe watch some of these nightmare-themed films to actually make Freddy and the film franchise scary again. You can find The Nightmare and Horsehead on Tubi. Come True is available to stream on Hulu. Paper House streams on Amazon Prime, and Shadow People and The Cell are available on demand. All of these are definitely worth a watch if you're into dreams and nightmares. So while I have your ears, why not try to dreamcast who might play the modern Freddy Krueger? I know many diehards will say no Robert Englund, no Freddy, but inevitably someone new is going to have to don the burn scars and fedora. I know many want Kevin Bacon to play the character. He's recognizable and a swell actor, but the guy is 65 years old. I'm sure the actor is spry, but how about someone who might be willing and able to play the character for a number of years and not just a one-shot? These Elm Street movies aren't going to have the largest of budgets, so snaring a big name like Bacon might be difficult. Englund himself was 37 when he played Freddy in 1984's Elm Street, so how about we go a little younger? My first pick was Alan Tudyk from Dodgeball and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, as I feel he's definitely got a Robert Englund vibe to him, plus he seems to be a geek who wants to play offbeat characters. Sure, he often does comedy, but if you've seen Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, you know he can be quite scary when he wants to be. Plus, just as Alan Tudyk plays a friendly extraterrestrial in Sci-Fi's Resident Alien, Robert Englund played the friendly alien Willie in V, and look how he turned out as Freddy. But Tudyk is 52 years old and maybe too big a star to want to play the Springwood slasher. So maybe let's go a little younger. My new favorite to play Freddy is David Dastmalchian. The actor is 48 years old and has been in too many genre films to count. You might not know his name, hell, I can barely pronounce it, but you know his iconic performances in The Dark Knight, Suicide Squad, and Ant-Man. On top of that, he's played some absolute lunatics in Prisoners, The Boogeyman, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and the upcoming Late Night with the Devil, and of course Dune. He's toiled around in secondary and tertiary roles for a while now, showing he can adapt to whatever genre he's given. Plus, he's a proud geek who writes a comic called Count Crowley for Dark Horse. For my money, this is the guy who should play Freddy Krueger. Ultimately, what I want in a new Nightmare on Elm Street film is for it to be scary again. And if the new film captures even half the feeling of the films I talked about above,
with the suggested actors, it just might have a chance. I want to be taken back to that night I watched the first film for the first time on my couch, holding my pillow to my chin and anticipating the worst terrors imaginable. I know it's almost impossible to recapture that feeling, but I can dream, can't I? So how about you? What do you want in a new Nightmare on Elm Street film? They're going to make it anyway, so you might as well let the world know down in the comments. And hey, while you're at it, I'm wondering, would you like to see a little bit more of these editorial pieces? I kind of like doing them, and if you guys like it too, there may be more to come.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're